Listen, I know you don't need qualifications to give advice on reading, but I feel like I just have to say I am in no way qualified to be giving advice. Hello, hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Annie. Something I get asked about a lot, particularly on Instagram, is how do I read? Specifically, how do I read so much? So far this year, as I'm filming this, I think I've read about 107 books. Might be 106. It is definitely over 100 though. And you guys want to know how I do that, how I read so much. Do I have any advice, any tips, any tricks? I've tried to figure out what it is that I do, how I do it. I've tried to crack the code, and I've tried to turn it into advice that I think everyone could at least try or get something out of. I have a few things to say, basically. Before we start though, I just want to say that it isn't actually important how many books you actually read. I don't want anyone to watch this and feel like they're not reading enough or feel like they have to read more. Absolutely not. That is absolutely not the case at all. It might be better to think of this like not as how to read more, but maybe how to make reading easier. Because what really matters most is to enjoy reading. It's really important that you enjoy what you read. This is my first tip. It sounds so obvious to say, but it is so important. As a student, there are plenty of books that I have to read for my classes that aren't exactly what I would pick up necessarily in my own time. Most of the books that I read are books that I read in my spare time. I do not read a lot of books for uni, in all honesty, but just in general, I feel like it's really easy to feel pressured into reading certain kinds of books. Either you'll see a list online of the best books that you should read this year, or there are people who think that you should only be reading like the classics or books that have won prizes, things like that. I feel like there are a lot of opinions around reading, and straight away I'm just going to tell you that none of that matters as long as you enjoy what you're reading. Pick up what you enjoy, no matter what anyone says. If it's some bodice-ripping romance, read it. If it's 1,000-page fantasy books, read it. If it's non-fiction, biographies, whatever it is, read it. But that is the most important thing. The most important thing. And obviously I can't tell you what you enjoy reading. That is up to you. That's on you. Another tip I have is to quite literally read easy books. What an easy book is will be different for everyone. In general, I will say the shorter the book and the more recent its publication is, the easier it will be to read, like in general. But again, everyone will have different books that they will find easier to consume than others. For example, I know that I will read a romance book a lot quicker than, say, a 500-page fantasy book. I know that classics for me are quite hard to get through. It takes a lot of effort and it definitely takes a lot of time. Whereas if I picked up a young adult contemporary right here, right now, I could probably read it in one sitting. I think there are a lot of factors into what makes a book easy. As I said, if it's short and it's been published recently, it'll probably be easier to read. But I mean, some people find high fantasy a breeze to get through. Some people find non-fiction a breeze to get through. I really recommend trying to find out what is easy for you to read and what isn't, so at least you know. And when you're struggling to read sometimes, you can pick up the easy books instead of something difficult. Something that I think that is just good to do in general is to try and read a wide variety of books. Whether that is reading different genres or reading different categories, so jumping between, middle grade, young adult, children's books to reading more diverse books, whether that's books with diverse casts or books written by diverse authors, even reading translated books, whatever it is. I would definitely recommend trying to spice up what you read a little bit. Not only because I think there are just so many books in the world and it's great to try and read as much as you can as possible, but either you will find something new that you'll really, really like, or you'll find something that you don't like and it'll make you appreciate what you do like even more. The next tip is probably the one that's helped me the most, and that is to find your favorite format of reading. For years, I only read like physical copies of books, whether that was the books that I owned or whether that was books from the library. But recently, in the past 2 years, I've started reading ebooks on my phone, and when I tell you it has changed my world, oh my gosh. Of course, there are also audiobooks, which I know lots of people love. I mean, it's really easy to listen to a book and do something else at the same time. But also I think it's really interesting because a lot of people actually retain information better when they listen to it. And I just think that a lot of people don't think to try something other than physical copies of books. So maybe spice it up a little, give something else a try. When I say, since I've started reading ebooks, the number of books that I've managed to read in a year, it's a lot more than it used to be. That's all I'm going to say. Like a lot more. A lot more. This next tip is going to be a little bit vague, and that is to make the time to read. I know, it's a lot easier said than done. Absolutely. I think this is what people mean when they ask me how I managed to read so much. I think they really want to know, how do I find the time to read? The simple answer, I prioritize reading. I love to read. I kind of view it as like taking time for myself to do something that I enjoy, to do something that is beneficial to my mental health. And so I find it quite easy to find the time to read. I do sometimes make the time for myself. For example, most mornings I will choose to stay in bed and pick up a book rather than getting up and doing work straight away or something like that. I know it's not that easy for everyone though. I know everybody has different schedules. So a few things that could maybe help you to make time in your day. Setting small daily goals, I know, is something that helps a lot of people. So you could set a goal to read every night before bed, or read over breakfast, or you could even set specific time goals or specific like page goals per day. Say you want to read for an hour every day, or you want to read like 10 pages a day. And also going back to the last tip, finding a format that you find easy to read that is also portable is really good. So if you like reading physical copies of books, take one with you when you go out. For me, reading on my phone is great because I go out, my phone is with me all the time. If I'm waiting for a coffee, I get my phone out, I read a book. If I'm on the bus, I get my phone out, I read a book, you know? Not a whole book. I feel like that makes it sound like I can read a whole book in a bus trip. I can't. No. I read though. Being able to fill little chunks of time in your day with reading can make a really big difference in how much you read. That was definitely more than one tip. But essentially, finding the time, making reading a priority, that can definitely help you make the time that you need in your schedule to read. I think it's just important for me to say again that reading should be something that you enjoy. I don't force myself to read. Like I don't. It should be fun. It shouldn't be like, you shouldn't absolutely feel like you've gotten to the end of the day and you're like, I really want to go to sleep. Oh, but I haven't read yet. Like, don't. If you force yourself into reading, I feel like you're actually going to end up reading less than end up reading more. So I think that's the main advice that I would give. I would say that's like, those are the main things that I do to read as much as I do. But I did think of a few other little tips that might also help. So I talked about setting little daily goals. Another thing I want to talk about is setting a big yearly goal. I do this every year. Last year my goal was to read 100 books. I read, I think, 104. So this year I set my goal to 120. So it's like still a bit of a challenge, but it doesn't feel entirely impossible. I know goals are like can be so stressful and it can take the joy out of a lot of things for some people. So maybe don't do this if you know that you're going to set a goal to read 20 books in a year and it's just going to like totally stop you from reading. I will also say, if you are going to set a yearly goal, make it achievable, especially if it's the first time that you're setting one. I mean, you can challenge yourself all you want, but I feel like if you make your goal, at least the first goal, achievable, you'll want to carry on with it. Like, you won't feel horrible about like not achieving your reading goal and then reading is ruined, you know? The next step is to actually track what you read. I track all of my books on Goodreads. That's also where I set my yearly goal. But I also have a reading log in my bullet journal, at the back of my bullet journal, where I just write down all of the books that I read. I write down the titles, I write down the date that I read it, what I rated it, and seeing the pages fill up is so satisfying to me. So I mean, if you can write a list of all the books you read, if you want to, you know, draw little boxes and tick them off as you go, like for every book that you read, if you want to take a picture of every book that you read, you know, like having some kind of tracking system, I think, is like oddly motivating. I will also say, if you keep track of the books that you read and how much you liked them, if you're struggling to find something to pick up next, you can go back and find a book that you really liked, and then you can try find something similar to that. Like it can have more than one use, you know? I think it's quite a good thing to do. Also, you should try and make reading fun, and I think the easiest way to do that is to make it a social thing. So whether that's watching YouTube videos, people reviewing books, talking about books, reading books, following people online who talk about books, joining a book club, joining readathons. I think if there's a social aspect, if you can talk to other people about books, especially if it's like you're talking about books that you love, if you're surrounding yourself with people who like the same books as you, you're going to be excited about reading, I think. I would hope. And hopefully that would help you read more. Or it's good if you follow people who read different things to you, because then you can get recommendations. You might find new things that you want to try that makes things interesting. You know, just like having reading in your general life as well can be really motivating. And this last tip is what I do when I am struggling to read a book. Usually when I have to read it for like school or something, but even sometimes with books that I've picked up and they're just going a little bit slowly, I try and read critically. And I know plenty of people just read critically naturally, but I mean, I will pick up a pencil and I will go along the page, I'll underline things, I'll circle things, I'll annotate, maybe I'll have a book with me and I will like write down reviews of the chapters, the paragraphs, I don't know, I'll take notes. It doesn't have to be anything groundbreaking, you know, could just be, haha, that was funny. Like, it could be anything. This is really just for like if you have to read a book, taking out the I don't want to read this aspect of it and just going through and noting down like what you're reading critically, objectively, can really help. And as I said, I do this with books that I read sometimes that are just like that I'm finding a bit boring, you know? Maybe I'll like have a book next to me and I'll be like, wow, really didn't like this. Or I'll write a review and be like, this really sucked. It doesn't have to be good. It really doesn't have to be good. No one else has to see it, but it can help. Those are all the little extra tips that I had. I've tried to make this as like short and concise as possible. I know that the time tip was very, very vague. I just think it's really difficult to give advice on how to structure your day when everyone's day is different. I was thinking I could make a video on how I manage my time, like in regards to reading, maybe even just in general how I manage my time, if that's something that you would be interested in. I also think I might make a video on reading faster, because I understand that reading speeds obviously affect how much you can read. If you read faster, you're obviously going to get through books quicker. I will say though, encouraging little note, the more you read, the better you get at it, the faster you'll be able to read, which means you'll be able to read more. So I guess what I'm saying is if you want to read more, keep reading. Just read more. No, but seriously, I hope that this was helpful. I seriously get asked this a lot. As I said, I tried to take how I read and turn it into tips that I hope you guys can use. I think the main thing that I want anyone to take away is that reading should be fun. Absolutely. Please just enjoy it. Don't feel like you have to read a certain amount of books each year. It really doesn't matter. With reading, quality over quantity is definitely key. As long as you're reading what you enjoy, that's really all that matters. If you liked this video, if you found this video useful, I would really appreciate it if you let me know. This is very different to anything that I've really considered doing before, and I'm not really sure how it went. So, also if you want me to do a video on reading faster or how I manage my time, definitely let me know and I will get around to doing that soon, I guess. Otherwise, that is it. Those are all the tips that I have, all the advice I can give. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I will see you guys with another video soon. Bye!